This is just a quick one for any beginner DJs out there, or anyone a bit further along for that matter, who's looking to export their Rekordbox playlist to a USB, either to play their first gigs if they haven't exported their music to a USB before to use with CDJs. It could be just to use some different equipment at a friend's house. Say it's like a Pioneer all-in-one standalone unit where you can plug your USB in there as well. It might just be using a laptop at a friend's house for a party or something. If you plug your USB in there and you're using Rekordbox, you can then access your playlist on that device as well. Or it might be something like going and having a play around at Pirate Studios. I do a lot of in-person lessons at Pirate Studios as well. So for those, like, students will need to export their music onto a USB to then use on the CDJs there as well. So there's a few different use cases that you might want to use that for. And today we're just going to quickly dive into how you would export your playlists into your USB. So we'll just jump into Rekordbox, and there's a couple of different options that you can use. This video, we're just going to go through the most simplest, which is just manually exporting your playlists. You can also use the sync manager, but to keep this one just short and sharp, we're just going to cover the manual export or cover the sync manager in a different video. So you can do this from either export or performance mode. It doesn't matter if you're just manually exporting them. And the first thing you want to do is just whack your USB into whatever spare port you have. And then you want to come down and just check that it has shown up. So if you scroll all the way down to the devices section here, you can see I've got two things in here. This first one is my external hard drive. It's actually got a little cross icon here. That means that the format of the hard drive isn't compatible. But if you don't have anything else plugged in, you should just have one device show up there, which will be your USB. So in this case, this E drive is my USB, and you can click on it. And this is just a quick tip, which is a good habit to get in the hang of doing. So if you click on here and then scroll down, you can see the available space. So generally you might want to check that before you start exporting your playlist to make sure that you've got enough space. So I can see here that I've got 4.2 gigabytes free. And if you just go up to whatever playlist it is that you're trying to export, you can see over here, it tells you how big that playlist actually is. So just say I was trying to export this playlist, it's only 154 megabytes. So I know that I've got plenty of space. So if you looked and this was like a massive playlist or something and it said it was 5 gigabytes and I only have 4, then you'd know that you just have to go back down to your USB here and go into the playlist section, and you might have to delete a couple of playlists first. So it's quite simple to export your playlist. If you've made sure that it is showing up here, then the next thing you do is just export them. There are a few different locations that you can do it from. So firstly, in your collection up here, you've got the playlist section, and you can just right click on a playlist and this little context menu will show up. All you need to do is just go to export playlist, and then your USB device will show up here. So mine's this E drive, and then you would just click on that. And it's as simple as that, really. I'm not going to do it just now because we'll do that in a little bit. I'll just show you the other ones quickly. So you can also export playlists directly from iTunes. So if you go into the iTunes section here, and then you just right click on a playlist, it will say export playlist, same thing. And then you just click on your USB. And the third option is if you have a playlist or a folder on your computer that has your music in it and you want to export that to your USB, you can go down into the Explorer section, navigate to wherever your folder is. So I've just created this folder here. And if you right click on that, you can go export as a playlist, and then you'll just choose your USB there like the other options. But ideally, you would want to import your playlists into your Rekordbox collection first, because when you import anything into your Rekordbox collection, it automatically analyzes the waveform of the file, and it will analyze the BPM and the key of the track. So all of that information is quite useful to have when you export your tracks onto a USB and then plug them into the CDJs. If you don't export them into Rekordbox first, then when you load them onto CDJs, they won't have any of that information available, and it will have to try and analyze it on the decks themselves. So if you're in a gig situation or something like that, you probably wouldn't have the time to analyze everything. So it's good to kind of have that stuff prepared in advance. So in this case, if we wanted to import this, we can just go import as a playlist if it's from your computer. And if you click on that, you can see that it's importing it. And down the bottom here, it will say analyzing. There's only one track in that playlist, so it's just saying one track down here. You can see there's a little, it's analyzing this now. And then if we go up into our collection, now under the playlist section, we have this little playlist here, which is the same title as the folder. And it's got our track in here. And this is the same as if you were using iTunes as well. So if you were using iTunes playlists, you would want to import that playlist first as well. So if we go import playlist, and now that's here as well. It's got the same song in it, but now that's here as well. If you have any playlists that are already in here, then they would have already been analyzed if they're in your collection. So with these ones, you can just go ahead and export that straight away. And so before you export, you're generally going to want to, not necessarily always, but you might want to set some cues and stuff. So that allows you to play your tracks a little bit easier. Like you might have a set already planned in advance if you're playing a gig, for example, or you might want to set up some generic cues that allow you to more easily play your tracks from the right positions. So if we just load up a track here, and then we'll just set a few random cues for demonstration. So I'm going to set a combination of hot cues and memory cues. To set a memory cue, you need to first set the temporary cue. And then if I go into the memory cue section and then press memory cue on here, it's going to set one of these red triangle memory cues. I'll just set another memory cue here, and then we'll set a couple of hot cues. And so now this is ready to go. These cues are just for demonstration purposes, by the way. You wouldn't randomly set your cues up like this. We'll talk about how to properly set cues in another video. And so now that you have your cues set up, then you can export your playlist to your USB. So now if I just right click on here, go to export playlist, and then click on my USB, you can see down the bottom it's exporting, has a little progress bar here. And now that's finished. And then it's also good practice to just go down and check that they've actually gone onto your USB before you disconnect it. So if you just click on the little arrow next to your USB and then go to playlists, you can check what's actually the playlists that are actually on your USB. And now if I click on this one, this is the playlist we've just added, and we can see the song that we've just exported. And you can also see on the preview here that we've got the cues that we've just added. So that's all on there, and that's all fine. And then the last step is just to make sure that you eject your USB. So if you hover over here, it just says remove USB device. You always want to do this before you take it out instead of just yanking it out, because if you don't eject it first, you do risk corrupting the USB or the files on there. And then there's a chance that it won't load properly when you try to plug it into the CDJs or whatever other equipment it is you use. So it's always good practice just to press this first. So now if we press remove USB device, you can see that now it's gone, and then you can unplug it and then you're good to go. And now when you go to your gig or your friend's place or Pirate Studios or something like that, when you plug in your USB into the CDJs, you'll be able to access the playlists on your USB and these queues that you've set up. One thing to note is that you can't export playlists or tracks from streaming services. So here, for example, we've got Tidal. If you go into your collection and then playlists, if you right click on something, there's no option to export it. So you can import the playlist into your collection. So then you can use it just while you're playing around on your laptop, but you can't export any playlists that are using tracks from streaming services. And so just to quickly show you in export mode as well, it's the same process as doing it in performance mode. All you do is just click on your playlist, go to export playlist, and click on your USB device. So it really is as simple as that, just to manually export your playlist.